They double-kicked her to the floor hard in front of 282 Navy SEALs during a live training demo meant to teach survival, not test it. She didn't scream. She didn't fight back. She stood up, and when both men laughed it off, she broke one knee and shattered the other's ankle. 7 seconds. 2 clean takedowns. No wasted motion. That day, she wasn't just showing technique. She was showing restraint. Until they gave her a reason not to. The wind off the Atlantic snapped across the concrete open-air corridor of Naval Special Warfare Command Unit 7. Sunlight burned through the morning mist, turning the coastline glare into shimmering water. The base pulsed with rhythm. Footfalls, shouted cadence, steel on steel. But today wasn't normal. Today was Readiness Evaluation Day. 282 SEALs and support staff had reported for a live inter-unit drill. What made this session different was the inclusion of a joint medic response exercise. At the center stood Petty Officer First Class Emily Carter. She was 28, average height, with dark hair braided tight under her cover. Her face didn't invite speculation. Focused, calm, unassuming. Most people didn't notice the faded recon tab on her sleeve, a remnant from 3 deployments, 2 as a combat medic, 1 embedded with a forward recon team that didn't exist on any open-source tracker. Carter had been reassigned 6 months earlier after a spinal shrapnel extraction she performed under blackout conditions made it into the quarterly operations report. She didn't ask questions, just followed orders. Standing at the edge of the evaluation compound, surrounded by men who could all bench twice her weight, she was here for something far more delicate. Demonstrating defensive engagement techniques for medics under ambush. Field medics rarely got the spotlight. Their drills were usually quiet, methodical support roles. But the brass wanted something different, something kinetic. Carter didn't flinch. Dressed in standard tan tactical pants, black compression top, utility belt, and training gloves, she stepped forward. No rank display, no theatrics, just the tools she needed. As she reached the front of the cordoned ring, she noticed the looks, the half-smirks, the raised brows. "Is that the medic?" whispered one voice. "She doesn't look like she's seen a fight," muttered another. Carter heard it all, as she always did, but let it pass like static. Chief Instructor Harris gave the formal intro. Today's module focuses on field medic retention protocols, how to engage when surrounded while treating a downed operative. Instructor Petty Officer First Class Carter has cross-branch clearance to demonstrate controlled hand-to-hand disarmament and escape techniques. A low murmur ran through the group. Carter stepped forward, chin level, calm and measured. "I'm not here to show something flashy," she said. "I'm here to show how to stay alive when you're the only person between someone bleeding out and a blade coming from behind." No cheers, no applause, just stares. 2 figures in the front drew attention. Senior Operator Jason Holt and trainee Kyle Mason, both from the Gold Team rotation. Holt was 6 feet 3 inches, barrel-chested, a man who believed brute force solved everything. Mason was younger, leaner, smirking, already mimicking Holt's cadence. "You seeing this?" Mason whispered. "She's half my size and teaching us how not to die." Holt exhaled low, amused. "Medic ballet," he said. "They want us to clap when she twirls." Around them, a few others chuckled. Some soldiers stiffened. The tension was subtle, but shifting. Carter stayed calm, clipped her gloves, and worked through shoulder roll warm-ups with the first volunteer. Brandon and Holt whispered. The room hadn't turned yet, but a storm was brewing, one that some already sensed. And what those men might do to prove themselves. Emily Carter stepped to the center of the mat with quiet precision, owning the space without raising her voice. She faced her first volunteer, a SEAL second ass from Black Squadron, briefed to play a hostile in a simulated injury scenario. The man nodded and dropped into a crouch, pretending to be wounded. Carter didn't use theatrics. Her voice was firm, calm, direct. If you're treating someone and get ambushed, you don't fight for dominance. You fight for a half-second window. You don't overpower. You redirect. You don't brace. You break, fast and clean, no wasted motion. Her first demonstration began with her kneeling beside the wounded SEAL, miming stabilization of ephemeral bleed. Suddenly, the volunteer lunged as the ambusher. Carter shifted with him, her knee dropped, elbow angled under his incoming arm, rolling with his momentum until he fell flat across the mat. She stayed low, controlled, lightly pinned his wrist in a joint-neutral lock before he could react. The watching SEALs, once casual, were now evaluating. Some crossed arms tighter. A few leaned forward. One muttered, "Ha!" Carter released the volunteer, stood, and reset silently. The second demonstration came faster. Same wounded position, different attack angle. This time, the volunteer lunged from behind. Carter didn't flinch. She ducked, pivoted, caught his forearm under her own, dropped her hip to force his center forward, spun, and locked him in a mock choke, ending with a stabilized base between his shoulders. No flair, no smile, just precise execution. "Notice the frame," she said. "You don't push, you shape." Behind her, Holt scoffed. "Yeah," he muttered to Mason. "You shape a good Instagram reel." Mason chuckled. "All this only works if your enemy attacks in slow motion." The words carried. Chief Harris glanced their way, jaw tightening, but still didn't intervene. A third volunteer stepped up, a larger man, 240 pounds, a SEAL first class. No scripted moves, just a simulated grab of her plate carrier from behind. He lunged. In less than 3 seconds, Carter redirected the grab, dropped her weight, rotated under his arm, and slid behind his stance, forearm against his spine, palm lightly on his opposite elbow. The man nodded once, tapped out silently, and disengaged. Somewhere, someone whispered, "That's real." But Holt and Mason weren't backing off. "She choreographed that," Mason said loudly. He was helping her. Holt smiled wide. "Performative. She can't do that against 2 real threats. No one's waiting their turn out there." A few heads turned, not in support, not anymore. Carter straightened and nodded toward Chief Harris, requesting a final scenario. Simulated encirclement with 2 approaching threats. The chief raised an eyebrow but nodded. "2 attackers is a different protocol," she said, calm and direct. Marcus and Mason had already stepped forward, grinning like they were ready for the spotlight. The demonstration was supposed to reset, but they didn't wait. They entered the circle with swagger, making other SEALs instinctively clear a path, not out of respect but calculation. Holt moved first, slow and deliberate. As Carter turned, he brushed her shoulder, just close enough to make contact. A hard bump. Nothing dramatic, just enough to throw her balance slightly. Emily Carter absorbed it without a word, adjusted, didn't even look at him. Brandon grinned wide and exaggerated a stumble behind her, arms flailing. "Wha?" he said. "Careful. Document don't want a shoulder cramp before we start dancing." A few uneasy laughs rippled through the crowd but died quickly. The silence afterward was louder. Carter stepped back, reset her posture, checked her spacing. Chief Harris moved toward the circle's edge. "This is still a controlled demonstration," he said sharply. "All movements follow approved contact parameters unless otherwise stated." Brandon raised his hands innocently. "No worries, Chief. Just getting into character." Holt circled the edge, stretching his neck like a predator loosening his collar. Carter finally spoke, calm and steady. "This is not a game. This drill simulates close-quarters combat under threat during casualty extraction." Holt laughed, a short nasal exhale. "So simulate it," he said. Brandon hovered behind her, close but not touching. "Let's see what happens when 2 attackers don't ask permission." The phrase hit like a gauntlet. A few senior SEALs stiffened. Chief Harris paused, mouth opening, then closing. Pulling them out now would escalate things publicly. Instead, he made a call. He stepped forward, hand raised. "Demonstration continues under my supervision," he said flatly. "No head strikes, no intentional trauma. Simulate the engagement. Single sequence." "Understood." Neither man answered but nodded, technically compliant. The crowd tightened, no longer a loose learning arc. Now it was a ring live wire tension. Carter stepped forward into the center. Holt cracked his neck. Brandon bounced on the balls of his feet. Around them, 282 SEALs watched in silence. Everyone could feel it. This wasn't a drill anymore. No formal signal, no countdown, just movement. Fast, sudden, and wrong. Holt lunged from Carter's right, cutting the angle like a man with 1,000 breach clears. Brandon came from the left a split second later. Their movement crude but synchronized, one purpose. Impact. Full weight simultaneous driving kicks, Holt mid-rib, Brandon to her thigh and side. Less than a second. Carter caught a flicker of motion, braced her core, but didn't reposition. The first blow hit her ribs. Pain shot through her torso. The second caught her off-balance leg. She collapsed, spine hitting the mat first, elbow next. She rolled instinctively to protect her head, breath leaving her in a sharp grunt. The thud was sickening, raw, uncontrolled. The entire circle stopped breathing. Boots scraped, gulls cried, wind tugged at rig lines, nothing else. Chief Harris froze mid-step. A squad medic stepped forward, caught himself. Everyone realized the same thing. This wasn't part of the demo. Energy had shifted violently, like a silent detonation. What had been playfight seconds ago was now primal. Carter didn't speak, gasp, or moan. She lay for a beat, face unreadable, eyes focused, ribs rising in short, shallow movements. Then her right hand curled inward, pushed the mat. The scrape of her glove sounded louder than the kicks. Brandon stepped back, suddenly unsure. Holt rolled his shoulders, trying to look casual, but his chest rose faster than before. Someone whispered, "She okay?" No one answered. Emily Carter was already rising. Not slowly, not shakily, but like a string being reset. Boots realigned, shoulders squared, breathing steady. She looked up straight at both of them. Her voice was low, flat, and cut across the formation. "You've crossed into live response." That was all she said. But in that single sentence, everyone understood. This was no longer a drill. This was survival. Emily Carter didn't posture. She didn't square up like a fighter. She didn't speak again. She simply stood, feet under her, spine aligned, breathing steady. No dramatic pose, no clenched fists, just a shift in energy. Like someone had flipped a switch inside her, trading explanation for execution. Her eyes moved between Jason Holt and Brandon once. No emotion, just calibration. Holt cracked his knuckles and started circling. Brandon flexed his fingers, trying to play it off. "Didn't mean to knock you down that hard," he said, half smiling. "Just reflex." Carter didn't respond. She took 2 steps forward, nothing aggressive, just reclaiming ground like a surgeon repositioning before a cut. Chief Harris hadn't moved. No one had. The 282 SEALs stood frozen. No longer students, no longer observers, just witnesses to something breaking rank. Marcus spoke, low, confident. "Still standing, huh? Let's see how long that lasts." Not to her, but to the circle, the weight of masculinity he thought protected him from consequences. Brandon exhaled, rolling his shoulders. They nodded to each other, subtle, synchronized. They thought they were still in control, setting the tempo. Carter's weight shifted, barely visible. Right foot half-rotated. Left shoulder dipped an inch, fingers relaxed. 3 senior SEALs exchanged a glance. They'd seen that stance before. Not in training, but in combat. The stance someone takes just before a confirmed kill. The crowd didn't murmur. Marcus blinked too fast. Brandon's smirk faltered. Carter wasn't trying to prove a point. She knew exactly what was about to happen. Holt struck first. Fast, training speed, not reckless. Tight guard, centerline charge, forearm leading to disrupt balance. But Carter wasn't there. She rotated outside his arc, pivoting her left foot with surgical timing. As his arm cleared where her shoulder had been, she redirected her weight forward, catching his extended wrist with one hand while planting her opposite forearm against the inside of his knee. Half a second of leverage, then crack. The sound echoed across the mat. Holt went down hard, leg bent wrong, clutching his knee, screaming. Gasps rippled across the circle. Carter didn't look down. She was already pivoting. Brandon hesitated, a fraction of a second between witnessing and reacting. He lunged late, reaching for her shoulder. Carter dropped under it, one leg forward, heel pivoting behind. She caught his wrist mid-lunge, turned with him and twisted downward, pulling his center of gravity off axis. Then her heel drove into his planted knee. Snap. Brandon didn't scream at first. Then the yell came. Sharp, high-pitched. 2 bodies down. 2 legs broken. 1 medic still standing. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't breathe. 282 SEALs stood motionless inside the ring, surrounded by the wreckage of their assumptions. One SEAL vomited quietly. Another crossed himself. Chief Harris took 2 steps forward, hand half raised, unsure whether to intervene or absorb what had unfolded. Carter didn't gloat. She backed away, lowered to a crouch, not to humiliate but to stabilize. She checked Holt's breathing, then Brandon's pulse. When she stood, her chest rose and fell with control. Not fury, not adrenaline, just procedure. Across the ring, every man who had once laughed stood completely still, because what they had just witnessed wasn't bravado. It was anatomy, precision, justice, and it had unfolded in under 7 seconds. The silence didn't lift, it deepened. Jason Holt lay curled, his body twisted around a knee that no longer supported weight. His jaw locked tight, screams reduced to breathless groans. Nearby, Brandon rocked back and forth, cradling his leg, teeth chattering. Not from cold, but trauma. 2 men who'd entered the circle like they owned it now couldn't stand, couldn't speak. The circle held. All 282 SEALs stayed in formation. No one moved toward the center except Emily Carter. Still breathing in rhythm, she stepped away from the wreckage and turned to the side. "Call medical," she said, calm and firm. Brandon was losing circulation in his foot. Her assessment was correct. His face had turned gray. Chief Harris jolted into motion, barking, "Now!" 2 base medics rushed in. One dropped beside Holt, unwrapping compression gauze. The other slid to Brandon, opening a field trauma kit. The rest of the SEALs held position, boots planted, arms frozen mid-motion. It was as if their bodies couldn't decide whether to move or look away. They'd seen combat wounds before, but not like this. Not from her. Not without warning. Not without raising her voice. Carter didn't linger. She moved to the edge of the ring, past Harris, past the operators, past the judgment following her all morning. She unclipped her gloves, tucked them into her belt, and stood at parade rest, quietly watching the medics. Not gloating, not apologizing, just steady. Behind her, someone whispered. She didn't flinch. Another voice followed, lower, more reverent. She had given them a chance, they hadn't taken it. The sound of Velcro, splints, and bone stabilization filled the air. No laughter, no whispers, just a brutal kind of respect, circulating like a shadow, because everyone now understood. Emily Carter wasn't just a female instructor. She was the last person you wanted to underestimate. Within the hour, the command structure responded. Holt was rushed into surgery with a torn ACL, fractured patella, and tibial plateau fracture. Brandon suffered a spiral fibula fracture and full ankle dislocation, though vascular compromise was avoided. By 1400 hours, an operational inquiry had been launched. Carter wasn't arrested. She was escorted by base security to a sealed debriefing room where a legal officer, an investigation representative, and a Naval Special Warfare Command official were waiting. She stood at ease. No attorney, no attitude, just clarity. The officer across from her, a woman with silver bars and a laptop, asked, "Petty Officer Carter, at what point did you determine the situation was no longer a controlled demonstration?" "The moment they struck me with real intent," Carter answered calmly. "I was off balance mid-shift, with no pre-contact indicator. It moved out of drill protocol and into survival training." "Did you issue a verbal warning?" "Yes." "What was it?" "You've crossed into live response." The room was quiet. The legal officer tapped a few keys. "We reviewed partial footage from Security Cam 2. No audio, but the strikes are clear." They showed stills. Holt and Brandon mid-lunge, Carter's body folding, head already turning. Another still, Holt on the ground, Brandon midfall, clean and precise. Was this level of force necessary? The rep asked. Carter kept her voice steady. If I hesitated, I would have been overrun. The injuries were caused by their forward momentum against applied rotational locks and stabilization failures. I didn't generate force. I used theirs. The board recorded her statement verbatim and moved to witness testimony. Over 30 SEALs gave formal accounts, technical, unemotional. It wasn't staged. They struck first. She gave a warning. It wasn't ego. She responded with total control. Medics confirmed timing. Holt's fracture occurred from an interior drop pivot. Brandon's break came from a targeted heel strike to the fibula, a textbook countermobility technique. One SEAL from Red Squadron summed it up in a single line. I've seen less restraint in combat. The review board spent 3 days compiling the full file. Whispers had already reached the Pentagon, Congress, and military social feeds. A female petty officer breaking 2 SEALs in front of 282 witnesses. Justified or not, it had to be handled quickly. The report was 52 pages. Medical evidence verified witness accounts. Video corroborated the events. Precedent, self-defense, and breach of protocol were all considered. There would be no disciplinary action against Emily Carter, but consequences came elsewhere. The verdict wasn't announced publicly. No briefings, no press statements, just 3 internal orders. Senior Operator Jason Holt was relieved of all active duty responsibilities, pending medical separation. His record noted violation of demonstration protocol, disregard of direct instructor authority, and use of unsanctioned force during a live evaluation. Trainee Brandon was removed from the Gold Team pipeline indefinitely for conduct unbecoming and deliberate endangerment during a structured exercise. Petty Officer Emily Carter was cleared of all misconduct, formally and fully. The language in her review was clinical but final. Responded to non-consensual aggression within tactical doctrine. Maintained force restraint, no violation of UCMJ, no deviation from field medical response guidelines. There was no ceremony. But in a back office near the training compound, Command Master Chief Julian Reyes, a 23-year veteran, called her in for a quiet word. He didn't look up from his clipboard. He didn't shake her hand. I've seen men in your position freeze, he said. You didn't. You didn't overcorrect either. You just did what needed doing, and you didn't turn it into a moment. That's why it landed like one. He scribbled something, tore the slip off the page, and passed it across the table. A reassignment, temporary field leadership rotation, medical tactics liaison, effective immediately. Not a medal, not a speech, but it meant something. They weren't just forgiving her, they were building from it. Later that week, the internal rotation roster was updated. Her name appeared without asterisk, observer tag, or parenthetical note. Emily Carter, lead Tier 2 protocol instructor. The men didn't talk about it much, but they noticed. None ever stepped into that circle again without remembering the day someone tried to break her, and ended up broken instead. 2 weeks later, routine had mostly returned. Drills, live-fire rotations, breach simulations. But something had shifted. People moved differently when she entered the room. Alert, respectful, not afraid. Carter didn't change. Same uniform, same gloves, same belt. Same clipped sentences, same early arrival, same late departure. But no one called her Doc anymore. They called her petty officer or ma'am or nothing at all, just a nod. Late one afternoon, after a low-angle evac drill near the southeast wall, she was restocking medical gear when SEAL Operator First Class Dane Rowley, one of the older guys with 8 tours, approached. He glanced at her trauma shears, then looked her in the eye. You didn't break them because you wanted to, he said. You broke them because they forced you to. Carter said nothing. He nodded once and walked away. That was it. No handshake, no medal, no apology, just truth. And that truth spread quietly, through drills, through how no one questioned her spot on the line, through how younger trainees asked questions instead of making jokes. No one mentioned Holt or Brandon by name, but everyone remembered, not as scandal, not as gossip, as lesson. What Carter had done wasn't anger. It was survival. What happens when arrogance meets training and loses? She wasn't just a medic anymore. She was part of the unit, the only woman in the room who didn't need to raise her voice to be heard. Would you have stepped into that circle knowing what she was capable of? Did she hold back? Or did they force her hand? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you believe discipline should always outrank ego, tap that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on the bell icon. Share this story with someone who still thinks strength only comes in one size. And when you're done, check out the other stories appearing on your screen right now. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with a brand new video.